Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about propagation. I'm going to try and keep it to the easiest forms of propagation. We're going to talk about 3 different types and I'm going to use it on 3 different plants around my home because to be honest, some of them maybe need a little bit of help. But the whole point about propagation is to create some baby plants for some mama plants. And who doesn't love a tiny little baby plant? I mean, I know I do. So let's have a look at a couple of different ways to propagate. This is truly for beginners if you've never propagated before, but don't be scared. It can seem a little bit overwhelming. I promise you, it's actually probably easier than you think. So let's get into it. Okay, so to be able to know where to cut onto a plant, onto a stem, we need to know a little bit about the stem itself to be able to cut it at the right place. So we're going to zoom into this stem here and I want to show you a close-up of the stem. Can you see this line right here? This line, and there's a leaf coming out and there's some roots you can see there. If we go up a little bit, you can also see it again, right? So there's a line, there's some roots, and there's actually a leaf coming out. This line here is called the node. So you're looking for, whenever you cut on a stem, you're looking for a node. There's another one. And there's another one that actually has had a previous cutting, you can see. Okay. Now I'm using this because it's quite spacious between each of the nodes, but you can see all the way, you can see another line, right? And there's another one. They're called the nodes. So the node is a very special point on a stem, which is literally a point of growth where you can get roots coming out of, you can get leaves coming out of. It's actually a really cool place for new cells to grow out of. So we want to cut just underneath the nodes in this propagation. So let's get to the next plant. Okay, let's get into the first one. So the very first type of propagation we're going to do is literally popping a cutting into soil. So I would only do this with plants that are either really hardy, really strong, and almost foolproof. I'm thinking maybe a jade plant would be really good for this. It has a nice thick stem and the leaves grow fairly quickly. Or we can do what we're going to do today and choose some stem cuttings that have some roots already there. The roots that I'm going to show you are actually quite grown out already. I wouldn't do this for really, really small roots coming out of the stem, but I'll show you. So let's have a look. The plant I'm going to cut up is my micans here. I've actually propagated it 2 months ago, but it's outgrown their spot. So I'm going to actually propagate them again. Remember we spoke about finding that line in the stem or also looking for where the leaves are coming from. And so right now on this stem that I've got right here, I can see the line, I can see the roots, and I can see a leaf. And the next one down, it's quite a long space between the 2 pieces of stem where the roots are coming out. And again, you can see this other space here. So there's a leaf coming out, there's roots coming out, but also I can see a very small line because it's a small stem, even with a little shoot coming out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it about 1.5 centimeters under the root, 1.5 centimeters, maybe 2 centimeters, with some sterilized cutters. Got some shears here, so I'm just going to sterilize them. Now, the reason why you sterilize your cutters is because you don't want any germs from any previous cuttings or, I don't know, any other materials to get into the cutting of the stem. So we do need to spray them and sterilize them. So, okay, ready? So this is the fun part. And you can do this a few times as long as you find that little line or the place that's called a node in the stem. So let's cut it up, shall we? So there's the rooted place. It's about 2 centimeters under. Chop! So there's my cutting. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the roots there, but I'm going to pull off the leaf because we're going to pop that part straight into the soil. So I've got some soil here that is good for philodendrons. It's quite chunky kind of mix. We'll talk about soils in another section. There's plenty of videos out there on YouTube to find the soil that's right. But it's quite a chunky mix, but it's also a mix that will stay a little bit damp for the next few weeks. The hard part of propagating is not the cutting and it's not necessarily the propagating. The hard part is putting it in the right environment afterwards to keep it in a nice, warm, bright spot. But we'll talk about that at the end. So right now I'm literally just going to get my hands dirty and I'm going to make some space, enough for those roots to pop all the way in, right? I'm going to pop him in. Easy. That's it. That's all you do. And then I'm just going to put the soil back around and I could keep that like that. Push the soil down a bit so he stands up. Ta-da! There's my first propagation. That's exactly all you have to do with a really hardy plant, or literally if there is roots already coming out, you can pop it straight into soil. Now, the great thing about doing that once and going straight into soil is that you don't have to change it again. The other two propagation methods that we're going to look at straight after this, you do have to pop it into the propagation mix, and then after a while when the roots go, you then have to pop it into pot with soil. It could be a bit of a risk as well because we're going straight in and it's hard to see what is happening to the roots now because it's straight into the soil, so you can't watch them and see if they're rot or if they stay safe. But at the same time, it's fairly easy if you do have roots already there, and make sure those roots are at least an inch or two, even 2 or 3 long before you pop it into the soil. But they're nice and easy, see? Okay, let's get to the next one. Okay, so we're here for propagation number 2. Now I realise this is on a little bit of an angle, but that's because I'm trying to get the camera to focus on me, but also on a big, tall moss pole where a plant is. This is one of my absolute favourite plants of all time because of the leaves. They are just gorgeous with white and green variegation. Look at that, absolutely gorgeous. And this one is growing very well, and literally it has grown to the top of the moss pole. I know you can't see it on the top, and it's coming back down again on this stem. So this is the stem we're going to cut. I'm even a little bit nervous now, but don't worry, I know you're all with me. And this one I want to chop off because it's at the top. I'm going to grow some more roots from the stem, and then once they're grown out, I'm going to pop them back into the bottom of this moss pole so it can cover and grow up the pole again and add to this bushiness and make it really bushy. So that's what I want to do. So let's cut it. Now again, I've sterilized the scissors, I've sprayed them and wiped them over so they're nice and sterilized. I'm going to find the stem and I'm going to find the node, the part where the leaf is coming out. There's a node there, and under that leaf there's another node. You can just see the roots. So I'm going to cut under the second node. So I've got 1, 2, I'm going to cut just under there, about 1.5 to 2 centimeters. Again, even though it's a thicker stem, I'm still going to cut 1.5. Are you ready? Ah! Okay, so there's one. Look at those leaves. Look at that leaf. Oh, that's just beautiful. Look at it. Oh, it's just beautiful. Okay, so there's one cutting, and then the second cutting, I'm going to do it pretty much off screen. You can just see the second one there. I'm going to cut just above that. And there is my second cutting, and oh my gosh, look at that leaf. Just beautiful, gorgeous color, lots of variegation. So what we're going to do now is, as much as I don't want to lose the leaf, I'm going to take him off and I'm going to unfortunately pop him in the compost. So we're going to have one leaf up the top, but that root is going to grow in the water. And that's what I want, okay? So as much as I don't like taking these leaves off, I am all about leaves after all. Come on, leafy. One, grabbing the table, and then again the bottom leaf, because I don't want the bottom leaves to rot when it goes into the second type of propagation. So we've got our 2 cuttings, let's pop these in some water. Okay, we're back. After the second cutting in the second type, we're going to do the second propagation, which is literally just popping my cuttings into some water. As you saw before, we took off the bottom leaf on the bottom node. So there's no leaf, there is a tiny, tiny little stub of a root. So we're going to pop this into just a nice old recycled jar, cleaned, pop him in. My second cutting again, I don't know if you can see that little nub. There's a root there, so he will actually grow. So we're just going to pop him into the jar like that, nice and simple, nice and easy. And we're going to take some water and we're going to fill up the jar. So you want to fill the water up, in this case, just to go maybe a centimetre or 2 above where those nodes are, where those roots are coming out. And that's it, okay? That's the second propagation. Now that leaf may not survive or not come out very easily because it's halfway grown. What it's going to do now is this part of the plant will put all its energy into growing more roots to survive. So it may take a little energy out of trying to grow that leaf, but it'll still use this leaf to grab the light and create some energy for itself through the green part of the leaf. So for me, I want to move this to a very bright, but indirect light, not direct sun, but a very bright spot, probably under an LED or grow light of some sort, because it's got quite a bit of white. But it's only the green part of the leaf that actually makes its energy. So I need to give it a decent amount of light because it's going to use a small amount of green leaf. There you go, propagation number 2. Now the third type of propagation that we're going to do today is probably one of my favorites, and it also helps save quite a lot of plants that haven't quite made it, or maybe I'm neglected a little bit too much. And it's basically creating a small propagation box. If you've ever seen my very first 2 or 3 minute video explaining this channel, you'll know that I kind of want to show everyone warts and all. Nothing is perfection around in plants. So I'm going to show you a plant that we're going to cut up. Don't laugh. I have neglected and it is almost, you would think this guy is dying. Look at this. But we're going to save this guy today through the third type of propagation technique. I'm going to literally, again, take the same cutting technique. I'm going to sterilize my cutters. We're going to chop up this based on where I can find those lines in the stem, those nodes. I'm going to cut up some pieces where there are actually no leaves available on the stem. So let's cut them up. I got my trusty spray and my scissors. I don't want any germs or any bugs or any pests coming from the previous plants I've cut onto this one. Although, I don't think it can get any worse, let's admit it. I'm going to cut this up quite a bit, so don't be scared. I might fast forward this bit, so let's cut him up into pieces, okay? Let's do this. I quite like this, it's quite exciting, I like it. Another one, there's lots of cuttings on this guy because honestly I want to cut him right down to almost start again. Okay, and that I'll leave and So unfortunately the battery has just run out, so it's a little bit darker behind me. So what I have done in the meantime is just taken off all the dead debris from the stem cuttings. There's a couple that I have with some leaves on there. I'm going to keep them on because, as I said in the previous one, in the water propagation, green leaves do create energy or help create energy for the little sticks. These are called wet sticks. I'm imagining because just a normal stick is dry and I think dead, so these are still alive and can be utilized. How do we go about our third and final propagation, super easy propagation technique? Okay, well I'm going to move this aside. So the first thing you need for this final propagation technique, the one I love the most, is a clear container. So I've got this one. I've bought this from a big box store here in Australia, in Sydney. Very cheap, I think it's about $9 or $10, which is cheap here in Australia. It's clear, so the sunlight can get in, the light can get in, but it also has a lid so I can enclose the container. Now, you can get a container without a lid. You do still want to enclose it later. You probably can just put some cling wrap onto the propagation box once it's done if you want to go that way, but preferably get one with a lid. They're very easy to find. You also want to make sure that the box is fairly high. This one is the height of my hand. You can go bigger and higher if you want to. Just make sure it's either a very bright white color or a clear color so the light can shine through. All we have to do with this, open up the container, and we have to put something in the base of the container to help create a damp type of environment. So not a wet environment, you don't want water just sitting there, you just want it damp so oxygen can still get to the little sticks and the roots that start growing from them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into the bottom of this container a mix that I have already mixed up, and this is sphagnum moss mixed with perlite. You can buy sphagnum moss and perlite in your big box stores. Here in Sydney, we buy it from Bunnings, obviously no sponsorship, but I do love my Bunnings. I love a good visit to Bunnings. And it's about 80% sphagnum moss and 20% perlite. And the moss itself, again, is damp to start with, not dry and stiff. All I'm gonna do is literally pop this mix up, make sure it's quite mixed up so it's not just perlite on the bottom and moss on the top. I've mixed it all up, and I'm going to literally pop it in the bottom of the container. It is damp, so it's sticking to the bowl, that's fine. Okay. So we've got my sphagnum moss, my perlite mix. If I'm seeing any of these little root stubs coming out of the wet stick, I want to pop them face down so the roots grow into this sphagnum perlite mix, okay? So literally, let's pop all of the sticks laying down, spaced out in this box. Okay, and now I'm going to close the lid. So, as you will have noticed, all three different types of propagation methods are different in themselves. However, there is one constant at the end. You want to make sure that all three different propagation methods or boxes or jars are put into a brightly lit, hopefully humid spot. So it's called bright indirect light. Don't put it into direct sun. The most important part is to now give these cuttings the right environment to flourish and grow. Just make sure that you keep these in the right environment for at least maybe 2 to 3 months. In spring, maybe a little bit less, 4 to 6 weeks. But make sure the roots that start growing out, growing into the substrate, are growing to at least 2 inches, maybe even leave it for 3 inches. So you want the roots to be quite long so it has a lot better of a chance to continue to grow and stay strong when you move it to its pot, in its final pot. So thank you once again for joining me here at my Leafy Lovin' channel. If you do like what I'm putting out there, please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for those who have already taken a chance on me. I really do hope to continue this. It's so much fun and there's so many things in the gardening, planting world that people just want to know. So no question is too silly or small. I promise you, we've all been there. We've all been beginners at this. So please do ask the questions in the chat, in the comments, if you have anything that you are unsure of, and I will try and answer them as much as possible. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.